I'd like to call this special emergency meeting to order at 5 o'clock. Madam Clerk, can you please call the roll?
Councilwoman Morgan,
Yes, ma'am.
Councilman Carvelli,
Present.
Mayor Orvac,
Present.
Councilwoman Carballo,
Here, ma'am.
and let the record reflect that Vice Mayor Martin is not present today.
Thank you, ma'am. My apologies, and it's also Tuesday, March 17th, 2020, and if I could have everyone stand for the invocation and the Pledge of Allegiance.
Almighty God in heaven, we ask thy blessings upon those gathered here this afternoon and upon all the citizens of Port St. Lucie. Look with favor on our leaders and give them the insights, the wisdom, and the patience to deal with the problems and tasks coming before them. Bless their work and their deliberations. Amen.
Amen.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you, Council. Before we get started, I would like to just take care of some quick business. The Rules of Council, Section 13 states that a council member may participate in a city council meeting via telephone, video conference, or other type of electronic communication if either one, there is a medical reason for unavailability, or two, there exists some extraordinary circumstance that prevents the council member's attendance in person. Such attendance shall not be permitted unless and until council members in attendance in person at the meeting approve such attendance. If I may have a vote to approve the attendance of the mayor. May I have a motion?
Motion to approve.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Madam Clerk, can you please call the roll?
The motion is for approval of the mayor to appear telephonically or via Skype to the special emergency council meeting. Councilman Carvelli,
Yes, ma'am.
Councilwoman Carballo,
Yes, ma'am.
Councilwoman Morgan.
Yes, ma'am.
And Mayor, I will go ahead and pass the gavel to you now, sir.
Thank you, ma'am. Can everyone hear me?
Yes, you're loud and clear.
Thank you. Thank you, members of council and the people of Port St. Lucie. Thank you for joining us for tonight's meeting on COVID-19, a federal, state, county, and now a local emergency. Before we get started with the manager's report and several resolutions, I'd like to address my physical absence from tonight's meeting. I'm incredibly sorry that I cannot be there with you in person in this moment of crisis. As I hope you know, there are very few things that could keep me away from you and our people in tonight's special meeting. But one of those things is practicing what we preach and doing the right thing even when it's the hard thing. And I wanted to share with everyone that last Wednesday night I felt a little tickle in my throat. And I was hoping it was just allergies. But then on Thursday I began experiencing the onset of flu-like symptoms, which became more severe over time: headache, sore throat, cough, fever, chills. So like so many of our residents, I've really wanted to know if this is the flu, the coronavirus, or something else. And I can really appreciate our citizens' frustrations with our nation's testing efforts. Fortunately, thanks to some federal and state adjustments and organizations like the Cleveland Clinic, we're starting to see some improvements. And I was able to get tested this morning. Unfortunately, I will not have the results for 3 to 5 days. And like all good citizens, must follow the coronavirus guidelines for America. And if you've read these, and they were released by the White House earlier today, the first rule is literally, if you feel sick, stay home, do not go to work. So that's what I'm doing. That's what I will continue to do until I'm clear to return, and I will be there the second that I am. But again, I'm sorry that I can't be with you tonight, be there with you tonight. But that won't stop us from getting our work done. Thank you. Mr. Manager, earlier today, I believe that you declared an emergency due to public health crisis, coronavirus, aka COVID-19, and that is on the website for the public record. Do you want to give your report, or would you ask for resolution 2034 to be read first?
Mr. Mayor, I'd like to give a brief prelude to why I signed the declaration of emergency. So as the council is aware, and many of our citizens aware, we've faced a number of different emergencies as a city, primarily weather-related. In this case, we have an emergency that is a health-related emergency. The city is following guidance from the governor's office, from our president, that we take this very seriously, and we do. And so today I'm recommending to you that you approve a resolution that would recognize the declaration of a local emergency. I signed this declaration, and I'm recommending that you affirm it because it has several powers that are important for our community in dealing with an emergency. It allows us, if needed, to declare a curfew if there were issues that we felt like that we really needed to constrain the hours of operations or the hours of people out on the street. It would allow that curfew to be declared by the manager and by the police chief. It allows us to suspend organized labor contracts. However, all the provisions of pay, compensation, and benefits remain in effect. And it allows us to suspend certain purchasing procedures that may be necessary to ensure that we procure goods and services so that the city can respond to an emergency. So that is why you have before you the declaration and a request to sign a resolution, that the council adopt a resolution for the declaration. And I do recommend approval that you approve the resolution.
Thank you, Mr. Manager. Madam Clerk, would you be so kind as to read Resolution 20-R34 into the record?
A resolution of the City of Port St. Lucie, Florida, declaring a state of emergency due to public health crisis, coronavirus, aka COVID-19, authorizing the declaration of a curfew, authorizing the exercise of emergency powers, providing for conflict, providing for severability, providing an effective date.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Mr. Manager, do you want to add anything specifically to this resolution?
Not to this resolution, Mr. Mayor. As we go through the other resolutions, at the end, I would like to give you a report on our preparedness for COVID-19.
Thank you, sir. Council, any questions, comments, or a motion?
Motion to approve Resolution 20-R34.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? No? Madam Clerk, please state the motion and call for a vote.
Motion is for approval of Resolution 20-R34. Mayor Orvac?
Yes, ma'am.
Councilwoman Caraballo?
Yes, ma'am.
Councilwoman Morgan?
Yes, ma'am.
Councilman Carvelli?
Yes, ma'am.
All right, next on the agenda, we have Resolution 20-35. Madam Clerk, will you please read the resolution?
A resolution of the City of Port St. Lucie, Florida, authorizing the city manager to implement a policy and provisions providing for electronic attendance by elected and appointed officials at city meetings during periods of declared public health emergency, providing for conflict, providing for severability, providing an effective date.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Mr. Manager?
Mr. Mayor, this is the best example of why we need this resolution and the ability to suspend normal practices and procedures that we could get. You know that you are ill. We have one member out of town, and yet that, you want to participate, and you should be able to, you or other members of the council should be able to participate and vote on a item or a council meeting during this emergency. So the resolution enables the adoption of and the promulgation from your staff to you of procedures that you would follow for future council meetings that might allow for a vote by electronically or other changes to our normal schedule for council meetings and special meetings.
Thank you, sir. Council, any questions for the manager?
I have
All right. Is there a motion?
a question. Mayor, can you?
Yes, sir.
I have a question. Mr. Blackburn, are we looking at possibly rescheduling the strategic plan meeting next week and delaying it a month or something? Or do we, because we're going to have a lot of people that want to attend that, and the CDC is recommending 10 or less in meetings. So how do you guys feel about that?
Well, your staff knows that it's going to be a very busy time. We've not developed a recommendation on postponing the strategic planning, but we have had some inquiries, and certainly that would be good guidance from the council. As you know, there's a lot of work from staff to get ready for the strategic planning session. It is scheduled. I'm always a little torn on knowing that that's a long-term view, not a short-term issue. But certainly we don't want to stress our community or the council, with trying to deal with things that could be done a month later or 6 weeks later, so.
We may need to convene other emergency meetings as things evolve. And I notice we're getting updates twice a day from CDC, the governor. So we may be required to take some additional actions on an emergency level. And I was just wondering if we could hold off on that for a month, just hold back for a month possibly. And I mean, if it could be done, otherwise we're bringing us together as well as the community folks that visit and then the staff. And that was just kind of worrisome to me.
It's a council decision.
Oh, okay. I don't know if you were.
All right. So on that question, Dr. Carpelli, I think it's a great question. I'm in favor of delaying it. I want us to lead by example. I want to err on the side of caution. How does the rest of the council feel?
Mayor, I'm okay with delaying it and maybe making it, maybe delaying it like 2 to 3 weeks, and then we continue to delay it if we need to. I think it's an important meeting, but at the same time,
Emergency.
it's an emergency situation, so I agree.
Councilman Morgan?
It's 2 weeks, and I understand what we're going through right now. I would leave that up to staff to make the call, but I'm fine if everybody wants to go ahead and postpone it and just put a date to be determined.
Mr. Mayor.
Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, that, based on feedback we're getting from council, we would recommend postponing it without a date to be determined right now because we have to coordinate with our facilitator to see how his schedule works. But the goal, I think, would be to determine a date within 30 days to 6 weeks. And we'll certainly bounce that date off of your schedule and your calendars as well. It's a great question.
Mr. Blackburn, Mayor, could I speak real quick? Can you hear me?
Sure.
Well, I
Yes.
appreciate that. I brought it up. On the back end of it, if you have advanced materials you want to get to us to review, I'm just concerned that, we don't know where this current matter is going. So I think it's what we're dealing with overrides so many other items at this point. Thank you.
Mayor, if I may?
Yes, ma'am.
I think it's important to balance both. I think it's important to deal with the emergency situation we have pending, but also make sure that government is going to work as it should be in the future, and that we allow staff to come back with that. That being said, Mr. Manager, I would like for certain considerations, obviously, to take place in regards to, we were going to hold it at the Botanical Gardens. Is that space large enough to have our personnel and have the proper spacing if necessary if we hold it in another month? We may need to consider that in the future. Our essential personnel in the strategic planning session is there because we have all of our directors. Do we need to maybe look at a situation where we have some people call in versus, actually having people live there to minimize the impact? So I don't want to hold it indefinitely, but I just think we need to strategize to ensure that we can hold it, but it's safe as possible.
Mr. Mayor, those are very good comments. If I know you were looking at the dais, but if you were able to look out into the audience, you'd see that the staff members who are here are all spread out 6 feet apart. And there are some venues that may be hard to accomplish. And so that's a good point, except for Sarah and Christina.
Communication.
So on this issue, council, I'd say that it's an evolving situation, and we're dealing with a specific issue, but we're also dealing with it in general, meaning that we haven't found our new normal yet. So I think everyone's familiar that the president and elements of our government are taking it kind of rolling 15-day or 2-week increments. And I would look to that as a way for us to set expectations going forward, Mr. Manager. You know, that we're constantly reevaluating, but let's help the public and ourselves with setting 2-week expectations. And if we find ourselves a month or two from now and we haven't found a new normal yet, then we're going to have to find ways to continue to do the good work of people. So, you know, we'll be crossing this bridge as we get there. But certainly, I think the strategic planning session was scheduled for what, the end of the month?
Monday.
So that's not a big deal to change that.
Yeah, that's,
No, it's not, Mr. Mayor, and we'd already received a inquiry from Dr. Barth, who was kind of hinting that you might want to consider rescheduling, although he did not recommend that, and I think was available. But we will work with your schedule, with the venue, and set a tentative date, recognizing that that may change, and that you're exactly right. And when I give my report, I'll touch on a few things that have changed literally over 24 hours. And that's what we're seeing on this virus. Very rapidly evolving situation.
Any additional questions about Resolution 20-35?
No, sir.
Mr. Mayor, this is Jim.
Yes, sir.
I do want to just, reiterate for the public that while this resolution is allowing for an expanded use of electronic attendance, that the provisions of the open meeting laws and the sunshine law are still going to be in effect, so the public will still be noticed of our meetings, and all the business of the city will be transacted at open meetings. So I just wanted to, make sure that that was clear on the record.
Thank you, sir. Any additional comments? If not, is there a motion?
Motion to approve Resolution 20-R35.
second, yeah.
We have a motion and a second. Any additional discussion? No? Madam Clerk, please state the motion and call for a vote.
The motion is for approval of Resolution 20-R35. Councilwoman Carballo?
Yes, ma'am.
Councilwoman Morgan?
Yes, ma'am.
Councilman Carvelli?
Yes, ma'am.
Mayor Orbach?
Yes, ma'am. That brings us to Resolution 20-36. Madam Clerk, please read the resolution.
A resolution of the City of Port St. Lucie, Florida, authorizing the city manager to execute any and all agreements with the state of Florida to apply for and receive disaster assistance and reimbursement resulting from the public health crisis, coronavirus, aka COVID-19, providing for conflict, providing for severability, providing an effective date.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Mr. Manager?
Mr. Mayor, this is a similar resolution that the council adopted for Dorian reimbursements. Certainly we want to be able to expedite signing of grant requests and agreements, and allows us to quickly move and not have to be scheduled on a council meeting. I'll certainly make reports to you of anything that we apply for, anything that any agreements that we felt were reasonable and that you would have approved. We'll give you a report on those items, and we won't approve them if we don't think you would find it wise.
Thank you, sir. Any questions for the manager? No? Is there a motion?
Motion to approve R-36, I believe it was.
Second.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion?
Standard procedure.
No? Madam Clerk, please state the motion and call for a vote.
Motion is for approval of Resolution 20-R36. Councilwoman Morgan?
Yes, ma'am.
Councilman Carvelli?
Yes, ma'am.
Mayor Orbach?
Yes, ma'am.
Councilwoman Carballo?
Yes, ma'am.
All right, so with that, are there any more formal resolutions on the docket?
No, sir.
No. All right, so we've just taken several bureaucratic actions, Mr. Manager, so now let's have a conversation on the reality of it.
Mr. Mayor, if I may, one item.
Yes.
Before we move on from the resolutions, could you please designate the Mayor Pro Tem to sign on your behalf these 3 resolutions so that we can get them fully executed?
Yes, thank you, Mr. City Attorney. Let's address the resolutions and then also just all execution of documents. Let the record reflect that the Vice Mayor or the Mayor Pro Tem is authorized to sign on my behalf during my absence as a result of COVID-19 protocol.
Thank you very much.
All right. Mr. Manager.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, would you like for me to provide an overview of some of the things that your staff has been doing to prepare for implementing COVID-19, or are there some general statements the council would like to lead off with, or you as the mayor?
I'd like you to go ahead and address it big picture. Life in Port St. Lucie has changed, and we just took some bureaucratic actions, but we didn't really discuss a lot of the ins and outs on what that means to people in their everyday lives and how we're working harder than ever to help them.
Well, thank you, Mr. Mayor, and I appreciate the opportunity. Your staff started early last week, actually, meeting regularly on preparing for COVID-19, asking our departments to all work with our emergency management coordinator to look at their continuity of operations plans, ensuring that we identify our essential services and how those services will be continuously offered to our public. And we do have plans for that. But I'd like to take just a step back and note that this is very rapidly evolving. So I think it was Monday, which just only yesterday in the morning, we were operating off a general strong guidance that we discourage gatherings of over 1,000 persons. During the day, earlier in the morning, we learned more that number had been lowered to 50. And by the end of the day, that number was lowered to 10. And so all of those changes, and those are in the president's news conference late in the afternoon, where it was suggested that the gatherings of 10 or more, that we try to prohibit or discourage those have a big impact on the services delivered by the city. And that's just an example of a few things that were happening. As well as today, there were decrees from Governor DeSantis that are also working to protect our entire state. So one of those decrees was that bars and nightclubs, so folks who derive over 50% of their revenue from the sale of alcohol, that they close today at 5 p.m. and they remain closed for 30 days. In addition, there was a resolution promulgated by the governor that indicated that restaurants should reduce their seating capacity by 50%, and that they should have a separation of 6 foot between tables. So these are things that literally, as we started our morning, we didn't have to work with. And so your staff has been working, and in some cases, you may see, if you go back yesterday morning, you may see something we provided to you or to our staff that you'll say, well, that's not consistent with what I'm hearing. Well, maybe because the rules have changed really fast. And I only lay that groundwork that we would expect as your staff. We've been on the federal, state, and county emergency operations calls, and things are changing very rapidly. So I want to note that it is your staff's commitment that we will continue to open the city hall and all of our city buildings. They will all be available to the public on our normal hours. Now, we are making some changes in the way we deliver services. So the council is aware, and I believe many of our citizens have access to our services through our citizen counters at utilities, through our permit counter at the building department, our pre-app meetings in the planning department. We have a lot of face-to-face opportunities. Have directed that those face-to-face opportunities where we have the utility front counter, the building department, that we cease those transactions and those service models, but that we find ways to ensure that our citizens know that you can do almost every bit of business with the city online. We have a Dropbox for your utility payments. We have a Dropbox for plans and permits for the building department. And we actually have, and we're very pleased that Mr. Dramus had the foresight to put in a drive-in window at the building department to accept rolled up plans and larger documents. So we will continue to provide all of our services. We're just providing them a little differently, and that's for both the public and your staff. So we have canceled or suspended a number of our events, programs, particularly in Parks and Recreation. And I want to just talk to a few of those, the kind of things that we're doing. One, the golf course, Saints Golf Course, will be open, but with more protective measures to protect both the staff members and our community. Within the Mid-Florida Events Center, our Rocksteady program, the Great Kids After School program, the Moving and Grooving, the toddler drop-off would provide a long list of programs that your Parks and Recreation Department is normally incredibly proud to present. But because some of those programs are provided to at-risk populations, some may put our staff at risk, all of those programs have been suspended for at least until next Friday. Next week, we'll evaluate, and just as you noted, Mr. Mayor, we're going to evaluate every week. Are there things that we've suspended that should be reinstated based on what we know at that time? We did, as the council is aware, we canceled the St. Patrick's Day Parade. Some events, they're hard to go back, hard to turn the clock back on. Certainly we'll work with our sponsors if they want to do something else, but that, once you cancel that, it's hard to get back. But many of our programs, we believe it's in the best interest of the public and in our employees that we suspend those and we'll reevaluate based on what we know at the time. So we are open, though, on normal business hours. So for all of our buildings, so the City Hall, Building B, the Police Department, we're all open. But we're not having those normal citizen interactions, but we're finding other ways to deliver the service. There may be a time when someone calls with a problem or an issue for the building department or for utilities where we really need a one-to-one interaction. Your staff will take appointments and we'll find a way to deliver those services, have those appointments in a safe manner. But just dropping in, we are not going to be delivering those services through those normal customer service windows, because we think that is where we have a potential to impact our citizens and our employees. So the building department will still be issuing building permits. As the council is, I know, aware, you can apply for a building permit online. If there's a roll of plans that you need to drop off, you can drop it off through our customer service drive-in window. We do have, for all that list of events or programs that are canceled, you can go on our website, certainly www.cityofpsl.com. It has all of those events. We implemented early this year a program we're very proud of called One PSL, and we've been doing everything we can to get the message out. For COVID-19 requests for information, for concerns, call our 1 PSL number. All of our call takers have been trained and will be provided information. It should be available today on COVID-19 services that you can access. In some cases, links of folks that have more information than the city would. That number is 772-871-1775. And certainly between that number and our website, you can get to your city services. So we're looking at, in that inventory, what are our most essential services? So we deliver water. We deliver clean water available at your tap. We're committed as your staff that that's not going to stop. We may juggle our staff around, we may make some changes, but we will continue to deliver clean water. We clean your water when you flush it. We make sure that it's safe and sanitary. That's an essential service. It's not going to stop. We pick up your garbage. As a city, we deem those services are very basic to our thriving in a civil society. Our city is going to provide those services. I've had conversations with Waste Pro representatives. They're making all of the right moves to make sure they can continue to deliver services. They may, if there were excessive absenteeism or issues, they may modify their service a little bit, maybe do less frequent pickup of vegetative debris or no vegetative debris. Garbage will be picked up so that we know we're safe and sanitary, and we will work with that essential service provider. And our public safety services, we have a stellar police department. You may see an officer respond with a mask and gloves on if there is suspected that there may be an unknown health issue with the area they're responding to. But we're committed, and we have a stock of protective gear that has been provided, and we are ordering more. So that is a prolonged period of time, and we would expect to have that protective gear. These are essential services of your city government. This is why we exist, and we're committed to finding the ways to make sure that there's no disruption in those essential services. So it's your staff, your leadership staff, call it our command staff under an emergency operations parlance. We've been meeting almost all day, every day, looking at issues that impact us and how do we deliver services. We are working as well on a number of human resource related issues. What if somebody is out? They've been to Italy and they come back. Do they come back right to work? Well, we're developing case-by-case analysis of all those issues to make sure that we don't cause impact to the community or our organization. We are authorizing telecommuting for our employees where the employee has a vital job, but it can be done at their house. And so if the phone rings, you may not know that it's direct to someone's home, but their job will go on, and we'll make sure that we are flexible for our employees, but with the very first priority, flexible for our citizens. So we're, through our Human Resources Department, some of the policies, were not in effect because we couldn't anticipate a COVID-19, but they will all be in effect within the next day or two. And we are, pursuing all of those issues, making sure our employees are well cared for, that we're being thoughtful, making sure that our first priority is our citizens. So we'll be meeting regularly every day to address COVID-19 issues which come up. And I had a suggestion from the mayor earlier today that something your staff had talked about, making sure that we know and can provide links and directions to citizens who may be out of toilet paper, may be out of paper towels, We'll be doing inventories, posting on our website. We'll have a team, how do we make sure we provide you, our citizens, where you can go to get some of these vital supplies. And so certainly the council will give us suggestions on things to address as well. And we want to make sure that we're a city that is here to help our citizens. And I'll breathe now,
Thank you.
Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Manager. Mr. Manager, here's an important question. Have we been notified of any confirmed coronavirus cases in St. Lucie County yet?
No, Mr. Mayor, we have not. And I was at a meeting this afternoon. Clint Sperber, the Health Department Director, was present. There are no confirmed cases in St. Lucie County.
Thank you. I want to use that as an opportunity just to make a general statement. And we shouldn't expect that to continue. We should expect that to change in the days, weeks, and months to come. And based on the information available to us, and it's important that we prepare ourselves to deal with this pandemic, not just for an inconvenient spring break, but for months. And accordingly, I'm calling on you, city manager, every member of city council, every member of our city team, every member of our community to help get our community through this crisis. If you've not already sprung into action, now's the time. This is an all hands on deck moment. And I'm asking for all of us to be informed, prepared, and committed to our response in the golden rule. Never panicked or worse. As you're likely aware, the coronavirus, and I don't want to repeat everything that's been said at the federal and state levels, the people want to hear it from us also. We have this state of emergency because it has been disproportionately severe for our senior and immunocompromised citizens. I believe the last time I checked, we have over 45,000 seniors in the city of Port St. Lucie. They're a precious resource. We don't want to see them at risk. We don't want to see our medical system overwhelmed. We don't want to see so many people out sick that our essential services can't function properly. So it's really important for us to manage this crisis. And as part of being informed, please pick your favorite resource so that you can track the number of cases that we see, not just in our community, but our state and our country. And I like the University of Washington. I also like Johns Hopkins sites. But if you see the number of confirmed cases being added every day, you can see how steep that curve is. And that's why we hear so many people talking about flattening the curve, because too many people are getting sick too fast right now. That's why these measures are so important. That's why we're talking about social distancing and good hygiene until everyone is sick of it. That's why you've seen the guidelines on mass gatherings evolve from what was originally 500. Actually, when I asked originally what the definition of mass gathering was, it wasn't readily defined. Then it was 500, then it was 250, then it was 50, and now it's 10. So I'm calling on our city council and our team to make sure that we're doing everything we can to enforce what are now state recommendations and also obviously federal recommendations. I think it's important to do everything that we can and err on the side of caution. Additionally, I want to thank all the healthcare providers out there. I'd like to, all of them, because they're all working hard. I'd like to give special thanks to Cleveland Clinic for stepping up to help with the testing deficit here locally. And here, I would call on us to find any creative ways possible to further testing so people can get their questions answered. It's important. It's proven itself important across the country. I'm calling on our residents and all of us, I'm calling on our better angels. Please do not hoard commodities like toilet paper. You don't need 5 years of toilet paper, but it's really important that everyone gets their fair share. No hoarding. Please do not engage in price gouging. I'm asking that retailers please impose buying limits so that none of our citizens are left out in the cold. I'd also ask our retailers to consider going to senior hours, and we've seen some national retailers do that. If you are healthy, you're not showing symptoms, you've recovered, please consider volunteering, supporting the food bank, donating blood, and helping others. I'd like to thank the St. Lucie Public Schools, the school board, people like Will Armstead, recognize that when school's out of session, that our kids can go hungry. That's a challenge that our community and many communities face. So it's important that we stepped up there, and they have, and we should be willing to help there. And of course, I want to thank all the hardworking first responders, essential service providers, and volunteers in our community, state, and nation. Mr. Manager, I think you mentioned it at least once today on the disconnect for the utility. One of the issues I'd like to discuss with council is the idea that until this crisis passes, we will not disconnect anyone's utilities except for gross abuse. You mentioned it. I'd also like you to have a supply chain task force, a retailers task force, where we have contacts with the GM level and up so that we can help point people in the right direction. I'm calling on us to be creative. I think it's not lost on us. It's definitely not lost on the federal government, what this is doing to the economy. It's going to take everyone to keep us going and to be there for people in need. All of our city employees are going to get a paycheck through this process, this crisis. Not everyone at home is so lucky. How can we find ways to help them? That's something that I don't expect you to be able to answer tonight, but it is something that I would like us to think about and do everything we can help moving forward. For example, we have contractors at the city in our fitness department that aren't giving classes anymore. Is there any way that we might help them? Is there a way that we can encourage people to order takeout and still tip the server? I think there's a specific question about our gyms that we operate. You know, can we do it by appointment only, clean them, allow no more than 10 people in at a time so that we can comply with the guidelines and at the same time continue to provide exceptional service. It's important that people still be allowed to be healthy, that they're not trapped in their own homes, if we can kind of thread the needle. And of course, I'll save some comments for the very end, but it's a cliche for a reason. When things are at their worst, we at the city have to be at our best. It's going to be tough. We're in for some tough weeks ahead, I think, but make no mistake, we are going to get through it. And if we can maximize our prevention efforts, we will minimize the impact of this crisis on our people, and we'll save lives. It's that important. That's what this job is about, and that's what we're going to do. Council, questions for the manager?
No, statement in a little while.
I'm sorry, Doc?
I'm just going to make a statement when we're
Okay.
talking.
Any questions for the manager?
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, you brought it up, and I think I may have not mentioned it during my comments, but it is our intent not to have any disconnects for our utilities through March. We'll reevaluate as we go through the process. Certainly, there may be someone who is egregious who hadn't paid their bill in 8 months, and those we'll look at a little closer. But we've seen similar policies from FP&L and from utilities throughout our county.
Council, does anyone have any issue with granting leniency there and being for people in a time of need?
No, I'm fine.
No, sir.
All right. All right. Go ahead and open it up to any statements that you want to make or questions or issues you want to discuss.
I was going to make a statement, Mayor. Can you hear?
Sure, Doc.
Okay. You know, having worked in schools for so many years, we try to get ahead of these things, but ultimately we used to get viral outbreaks once or twice a year in every school, tuberculosis contact, and then testing. Like the mayor said, the key here is prevention. If we can, as residents, and I hope there's many residents listening, the key is staying ahead of this and following the recommendations of the CDC, the governor, and whatever recommendations come out of our city or our county. So, number one, if you have any questions about your health, please immediately contact your primary care physician or the health department. Yesterday, my assistant and I assisted a person, and that should have been on the top of the list, to call your healthcare provider for direction and guidance. Now's the time to be health conscious, and our thoughts with everyone as we work together through this important matter. Okay, very proud of our residents and our businesses in the city. Without singling out too many, I did speak to the managers, Mr. Blackburn at Walmart, Publix, and they are diligently working to stock the shelves. The supply chain's been disrupted in a lot of ways, and they're putting things out. And to address what the mayor mentioned, we have seen limits on purchases, allowing people limits to avoid the hoarding and allowing all the residents the opportunity to get access to items they need, such as Lysol, toilet paper, tissues, everything you name. But I appreciate everyone being patient as you work through this and civil towards your fellow neighbors and residents. Yesterday, I was at the end of the day, I was walking through some plazas and I stopped by Roy's Barbershop. He's an example of someone who took this very seriously. He had all of the staff cleaning everything in the shop. And this is an example of a business that has contact with many residents. And I spoke to all the employees and the owner, and I said, I'm very impressed with what you're doing. He said, we've been doing this all day. So I noticed our businesses and our residences are taking this very seriously. And lastly, please continue to monitor the local news and our excellent website, which the manager and the communications department put together. All of our advisories are listed here, contacts, resources, phone numbers. Our website has a lot of information. We do have good technology still in use. That's not going to be affected by this crisis. Okay. With regard to the school district, I can help address a little concerns there, having worked in that business for so long. As we all know, the state testing is coming up. People are very concerned about their children, whether they'll be promoted or past the school year in the final quarter of the school year. These are all important questions undoubtedly residents have. Please monitor the school district's website, and the news has been putting out very good information as the schools continue to pump out, advisory after advisory. Once again, wish everyone the best. Stay healthy during this. Follow the guidelines and recommendations that are going out, and avoid contact on a large-scale basis. The goal is prevention. We could stay ahead of this if we all work together. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Carvelli. I don't know if you could hear yourself. If you did, I'm going to have to pay $5 to the Humane Society. I was trying to open up our Facebook Live so I could see if any comments were coming in. Could you hear it?
No, we
Could you
didn't
hear
hear
yourself?
I did. It was vibrating or something.
We didn't hear it. I didn't hear it. It didn't sound live.
All right. Well, thank you, Dr. Carvelli, for your comments. Who wants to go next?
Mayor. So I just wanted to hit on a couple things too that you'd brought up already. And I was at the county meeting when they declared their state of emergency. And again, with the Boys and Girls Club, as well as our schools, are doing an excellent job. The superintendent stated that there's 3 locations for children to be able to pick up meals. That's at C.A. Moore, Northport K-8, and Treasure Coast High School. Again, their number is 772-429-3600 if you have any questions. The school district is going to continue to monitor the situation, and Mr. Gent did say that they're looking at online options. So I just wanted to bring that up. And also what they brought up too, and I think it's important to note, is this is a big human issue that we're having. Everyone is trying to stay as healthy as possible, but more importantly, our first responders, our doctors, everybody, PD, fire, paramedics, and everyone around you that is trying to help you or will need to help you at some point in time if you need help, also needs to stay healthy. And so they were very, very specific on the 3 questions that are on the CDC website. If you are going to call 911, if you're going to come in contact with someone from PD and they're going to approach you, if you have answered yes to any of those 3 questions that the CDC has, if you've traveled, et cetera, please make sure that you're honest and you're upfront right at the jump straight, right at the beginning. It could literally mean them being able to help someone else in the next day or in the next weeks to come. So I think that's really important. Also, the governor did mention, I did have a question, or I saw some comments on Facebook in regards to small businesses and concerns with small businesses with potential future shutdowns. The governor did issue an executive order to have an SBA loan program, and so I encourage any small business owner that is really concerned about that to please look into that. The opening period is March 7th through March 8th, up to $50,000 for any affected business that qualifies. And Mr. Manager, I did speak to you about it today. Did you want to add to that?
Yeah, Mr. Mayor and Councilmember Caraballo, I have tasked our Mr. Wooten, our business navigator, to help businesses. He may, if we have others that can assist him as well, that perhaps as we go through some of these shutdowns, we'll pull a team together to help folks if they need guidance on filling out applications, reaching out to them. There are there's federal assistance, I believe, and I've not read it all, through the bill that was adopted last week, and then through our state. And so we want to help our small businesses, and Mr. Wooten will be the lead in that for our community.
Thank you. And in the last part, I want to talk about more of the human side of it and just kind of share something real quick. I had a hard moment in my family this past week because everyone knows how, if you know me, you know how social I am, how much I love to hug and kiss people, and that's part of my culture. And I'm sending the mayor a kiss right now from afar, right, Mayor? And so my family, I walked into dinner last night, and my mom and I looked at each other, and I'm sure everyone in our city is facing this right now. I looked at my mother looked at me and said, I don't even know if I should hug you right now. And that was tough. That was tough. And that's what every person right now is sitting down and thinking. And so I want to take this opportunity to really talk about that while we're facing adversity, while we're facing a challenge as a community, we have an opportunity to find ways to continue to love, to find ways to continue to be kind. And I'm going to encourage, despite what I've seen, despite the hoarding, despite that I walked into Walmart on Wednesday at the end of the day, and I do mean it looked worse than a hurricane. And it just, I'm going to let that go and believe that our city is better than that our citizens are better than that we're going to ensure that we are there for our neighbors, that we are going to be checking in where we can, that even though we've got to keep 6 feet, that doesn't mean that we can't see how you're doing. And also, there's opportunity here to visit our parks. If you're within a safe distance of each other and following the rules and guidelines, we have beautiful beaches. So for those that might have to spend some downtime, fresh air and sunshine in Florida couldn't be better. There are many places in America that can be facing this issue and this crisis that don't have the accessibility that we have here in Port St. Lucie. We're still the greatest city in my mind in the country and on earth. And Mayor, I appreciate your challenge to the council and to the city staff. And as always, I will do whatever I can as a part of this team, as a citizen of Port St. Lucie, to help you and everyone any way I can. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Councilman Morgan, I have an even better view of you now than I do from the dais.
Wow. Hey, out in TV land. I don't need to be said all again. I echo the same sentiments, and Mayor, you did a great job describing everything. Thank you, City Manager, for the update, and a big, huge thank you to all the staff, the dedicated staff. We're all family, and I see how hard that you're working for this, and it's tough out there. And I just want to leave you with, I guess now I came up with 4 Ps. Personal hygiene, prevention, preparedness, and most importantly, patience. God bless.
Thank you. Can you just tell me what was the 4 Ps again?
Personal hygiene, prevention, preparedness, and patience.
Okay, excellent. Thank you for having the patience to repeat that for me.
Mayor,
Yes, sir.
Clemson, we had the 7 Ps. Prior proper planning prevents a piss poor performance. We used to always say that as kids there.
Council, do me a favor and look out into the audience. Do we have any members of the public here for public to be heard?
Any members? Seeing none, Mayor.
No, no one. We do have some questions coming in from Facebook Live. So I want to go ahead and do my best to try to address these. So the issue of testing is coming up again and again. And unfortunately, this is not one of those situations where we can directly intervene because this is a national phenomenon. So across the country, and as you might recall, in my opening comments included comments regarding testing, and I've been through it personally. So, and you've also heard Dr. Fauci say we're not where we should have been. So Cleveland Clinic, they have a drive-through facility set up at their Stewart location, and we expect that later this week they will have a similar location set up at Tradition Hospital. So, and we have been in contact with them, we have been encouraging them, and really that's all we can do is encourage, because we're seeing that there's a national shortage of certain things, like the swabs, the reagents, the actual chemicals that are used in the test. So we as a city don't really have an ability to overcome that, but we are trying to actively work with our partners. Mr. Manager, do you have anything that you would like to add to that?
Mr. Mayor, I think you captured it well. The health department is still giving guidance to the medical providers. My understanding is you do, the medical provider should be the one referring you for a test. They do that in concert with the health department, and meeting certain criteria is very important.
All right. Another question that we received was about rent and mortgage payments. And that's another example of where we can't really move that needle at the local level. We can encourage our local banks, our Florida banks, to be good neighbors, call on their better angels. But really that kind of action is going to have to come from the federal level. We have questions about restaurants. And Mr. Manager, we will be enforcing the state order. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay, and so you might be more familiar with the order than I am, but I know that as of 5 o'clock today, bars and nightclubs could no longer serve alcohol, and that restaurants have been asked to be at half of their occupancy, and that no groups of 10 or more be closer than 6 feet, and that all employees be checked for symptoms. Anything else to add to that, Mr. Manager?
No, Mr. Mayor, and our local police department will be enforcing that order. Certainly, we will try to work with the restaurant on the first time we're communicating, but that is our responsibility, and we'll be part of, we'll follow our statutes.
And there's questions about schools, and of course, we're not in control of schools, but we do have some breaking news. It seems like the state board has announced that schools will be closed until April 15th. So that's new information. Mr. Manager, another question is regarding daycares. Has there been any guidance on daycares to date?
No, Mr. Mayor, there's been no guidance that, other than what we're seeing is no gatherings of more than 10 people. So I think that's going to be one of the foundational questions about daycares.
All right, and that's a tough one because there's a balancing act that not everyone has the ability to stay home. People have to earn a living, and first responders, healthcare professionals might have to work and make alternative arrangements. So just see if we could follow up with the state on that one to see if they have any thoughts, Mr. Manager. There are no cases in PSL yet, but we shouldn't put too much stock in that. And that. And I think someone made a comment, it's good to touch on again. The Saints will remain open. Our parks are open, correct?
Mr. Mayor, not only will they remain open, but we would encourage people if, we're hearing that some of the commercial gyms are closed, go for a walk in one of our parks. Go play golf.
Yeah.
If you have time, go play golf at the Saints.
Safe place.
We have those services. We have employees there to help you. They will try to limit their personal contact so that we don't cause any issues for ourselves or others. But our parks are great, and we would encourage our citizens to use them.
Mayor?
Yes, ma'am.
I had also mentioned to the manager, we have remember our nice program pocket map that our Citizen Summit had? I asked the manager if we could have more copies, and since grocery stores will still be open, if we could do something similar to the hurricane guide where we might drop some of these at different grocery stores right at checkout, people could pick them up and see where their parks are in the city.
Yeah, absolutely. And we should encourage everyone to make the best of a difficult situation. We have great parks out there, and this was going to be spring break anyways. So take your family out to one of our parks. There is a lot of room at McCarty Ranch. There is a lot of room at Peacock or a number of places where you could be with your family in the great outdoors and be able to comply with 6 foot of separation and then some. So, and be out in the sunshine. It's great. So whether you're at the Saints or one of the other parks, please check that out. And, I'll take this one last question. Someone asked, what does vegetative debris have to do with the coronavirus? And what I would say is that we have levels of service and we have essential services, and we have to prepare for not best case scenario, worst case scenario. So if half of Waste Pro's staff gets sick and they fall behind, and we know that unfortunately they've been kind of behind the curve with how fast we've been growing as it is, so they've been playing catch up. So if they lose half their staff, what's more important? Picking up the garbage or the vegetative debris? So we're just having that discussion to identify what could happen if a lot of people went out sick. Getting the garbage picked up is more important than getting the vegetative debris picked up. Right, Mr. Manager?
That's exactly right, Mr. Mayor.
So that's what it has to do with that. But I think this is a great forum. I appreciate everyone's questions from Facebook. Please keep the questions coming. That's what the one PSL line is for. And Mr. Manager, what is that phone number?
That phone number is 772-871-1775.
Or one PSL.
Or one PSL, correct.
All right. All right, anything else, Council? I wish I could be there with you personally. Thank you so much for allowing me to Skype in.
We wish you were here too, Mayor. We want you just to get better.
All right, I'm going to be there as soon as I'm cleared, but I heard Dr. Carvelli was going to be absent if I came, so I knew I had to lead by example.
Well, after you got tested, now we're waiting.
Oh. If you guys can hear me, I am cutting out. So, Councilman Carballo, I will leave it to you to close out the meeting.
Mayor, you don't have,
Thank you, everybody.
we still see you. Do you have any closing comments? You're still on. Anything else? Anything else? This meeting then is adjourned.
I didn't know what he had. Thank you.